Let's go to Richie in Merrimack, New Hampshire. You're on Free Talk Live. Richie.
Hey, last week you had someone on who was talking about, I guess, Florida psychiatric system.
Yeah, the Baker Act, as it's called in Florida. It's called different things in other places. It basically allows people to be involuntarily committed against their will and then held for a certain period of time. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I've been involuntarily committed in the state of New Hampshire.
Oh, so no, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. You guys had some questions for it, so I thought I could explain how the New Hampshire system works a bit.
Go for it.
In New Hampshire, you have 3 days when someone will file a petition. They get 3 days to inform the courts that you're going to be committed, and then you have to have a court date within those 3 days.
Okay.
So I got there when the sheriff's department brought me in around 3 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was meeting with my lawyer and I was in court. So it sounded like in Florida you didn't even get a lawyer. In New Hampshire, you do.
That's interesting.
And yeah, and then the judge will make a ruling as to whether or not they can prove that you were a danger to yourself or others. If they can't prove that, then you go home. But if the judge rules that you were a danger to yourself or others, you can get up to an additional 14 days.
Jeez.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
I had the 14 days, and then the doctors actually got a 2-year commitment out of it. I didn't stay in the hospital for 2 years. They released me on what's called a conditional discharge. So they can get up to a 5-year commitment out of somebody after those initial 14 days.
What does that mean when they got it out of you? Did you commit yourself to their treatment? Did they force you to do it?
No, I was about 14 years old and I had attempted suicide. And my mother had filed a petition to have me involuntarily committed.
Uh-huh.
And so the sheriff's department came down to the emergency room and transported me to Concord State Hospital.
Oh, my God. All right. And so then you stayed there for 14 days. And then after that, what was it that, did your parents sign you into this commitment for the 2-year period? How did you get on that 2-year thing?
Okay. The doctors had filed more paperwork with the court to get a 2-year commitment. So I was involuntary. So I ended up staying in for about 4 months. And then after the 4 months, they released me on what's called a conditional discharge.
And this was from the state hospital, meaning a mental ward run by the state. To me, that sounds like a nightmarish place to live.
To be honest with you, the conditions are probably a lot better than prison. I do have to say that. But yeah, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that didn't really need to be in there.
I believe that. Did they force medicate you as well, Richie?
I didn't refuse medication. They can't actually force the medication on you unless you're actually hurting somebody. But no, they prescribed me medication. I didn't refuse it.
What happens if you refuse it?
To be honest with you, I don't know, because they can only keep you in there as long as you can prove that you're a danger to yourself or other people.
Mm-hmm.
So if you refuse the medication and you're not doing anything that would cause concern for them to be a danger, I think it would be a very difficult case for them to force you.
Do you think that the people in the state hospital helped you, or were you all right and you just had a bad time and you kind of dealt with it on your own? Was it actually useful in any way to you?
To be honest with you, I had never been suicidal until I was prescribed Prozac. So I think it was the medications that actually caused it. It's kind of weird if you've ever taken some of the antidepressants.
No, I have not.
You start feeling emotions and start having thoughts that you would even dream of having.
Huh.
So.
Were you continued on the Prozac while you were involuntarily committed?
No, they took me off. They put me on another medication called Effexor. And
I've heard bad things about that too. Do you feel like ultimately that the 2 years was a complete waste? What's your verdict on that?
Well, I got released on the conditional discharge. A few months later, the effects were I started hearing voices when I was on that.
Whoa.
And my conditional discharge got revoked, and they had to bring me back into court again for that too. But,
what is it like when you're hearing voices on Effexor? Does it sound like it's coming from somewhere in the room, or is it in your head? What is it like when you're hearing voices on Effexor?
It sounds like it's coming from in your head. From the lady psychiatrist explained it to me that if you're hearing voices in your head, that's like better than hearing them outside your head. It's a different type of hallucination, I guess.
I see. It's more of a narrative sort of thing. What voices? I mean, were they different voices? Were they distinct? Did you hear the same voices multiple times?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain to somebody that hasn't really experienced it before. You know the voice that you hear inside your own head when you think?
Sure.
All right. Imagine that with a completely separate voice that you have no control over. And that's kind of, or at least that you feel that you have no control over.
Does the voice tell you to do things? What are some of the things the voice is saying? A lot of different things. The way it's explained to me is it's kind of like your subconscious. But I mean, it was telling me my medications were poison and all sorts of stuff like that. I believe it on that one, on that count.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't telling you to do anything violent or dangerous, was it?
No, it was causing me to be extremely paranoid. And
okay.
Yeah. So the fear from my mom and the doctors were that the paranoia was going to cause me to defend myself when I wasn't actually defending myself.
Well, I'm glad you got out, Richie, and thanks for telling us your story tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. Man, the experiences people have had, Daryl, I don't know if you know anybody who's done this stuff, but the antidepressants like Richie was talking about there, hearing voices, people go on murder sprees when they're on this stuff. I don't know if it's Effexor or which ones it is.
I've heard a lot of stories about that. When I was younger, my dad was on some kind of medication for narcolepsy and depression, and it basically turned him into like a human zombie.
What does that mean? What is a human zombie?
He had no emotions. No, he had no emotions.
Oh, wow.
And he did not look like he was a person. If that makes any sense. Like, the life was just taken out of his face.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.